Gingerbread dough is multifaceted, and the ingredients are based on what the final job of the dough must do. A gingerbread house doesn't need expensive ingredients. Replacing butter with shortening and using less molasses and baking it to a firm, drier state gives you good structure. Using honey instead of molasses can give you a flexible dough that is able to be manipulated while it's warm and to hold an impression. I love a really dark brown gingerbread. Shortening and a 54% molasses gives me a nice color. When it comes to making gingerbread people, I want to build in the option for it to be eaten, so I use a dough that has a lot of spice, a little bit of flexibility, and butter in place of shortening. The recipe I use here was made with the creaming method and is rolled to about 1/4 inch thick. This recipe also has baking soda, so it's going to puff a little bit. So I'll bake it directly on an aluminum baking pan so that it bakes a little darker, and I will punch the holes for hanging while the dough is still warm, and then I will cool it on an open rack with good airflow so that they will dry firm and the moisture that evaporates from the cookie while cooling does not get reabsorbed. Your dough should be very cold, both when you cut your shapes and when you bake the dough. This is to help it retain its shape and to not puff too very much. That is why when you put your cutouts onto a baking sheet, they can be placed relatively close together. If these are intended to be eaten, you need to follow food sanitation practices, but if they're just going on your Christmas tree and going to be used as a decoration, you can be a little more lax. Gingerbread people are great for giving because you can add it to a gift as a hang tag, wrap it in a cello bag as a small gift, gift it as a set to complete someone else's Christmas tree, or you can keep them for yourself to make your own tree look beautiful. Gingerbread people are generally relatively large cookie cutters, and they use up a lot of dough very quickly. But you can use re-roll for an ornament if it's not going to be eaten and get more yield out of your one batch. There are very few rules, but you must punch your hole as soon as they come out of the oven, or else they will crack when you try to put a hole through them. I have a dough plunger, but you can use a circle pastry tip to cut the hole out of the top of the cookie. And I recommend putting the ribbons on the cookies before you decorate them, but if you don't, just make sure the decorations are 100% dry before you add the ribbons and handle the cookies. The gingerbread people are already a beautiful color, so all you need to do is add 1 or 2 accent colors to really make them pop. I think red and white really stand out among all the ornaments in the boughs of your tree. I usually use red hots for buttons, but I couldn't find any, so I cut the hot tamales in half and used those. If you don't like the face that you pipe, you can wipe it off with a damp cloth and start again. Piping faces is hard, but if you use a clean, damp paintbrush, you can push things around and clean them up to make them look a little bit better. You can also get gingerbread people ready all the way up to the point where it has a ribbon through the hole, and your guests at a party, grown-ups and kids alike, can decorate their own and bring it home for their own tree. I made this gingerbread dough weeks ago, sheeted it out, and put it in the freezer wrapped tight. I was ready to bake. I pulled the sheets out, put them in the refrigerator to temper in a bag, and then cut them out when I was ready to use them. This made it so that a final project that is truly a wow project looks like it's super complicated, but because I had a good production schedule, I broke it down and I did it in parts. It was effortless. If you are running a business or a fundraising cookie sale, presenting cookies in this fashion can get you a premium price. I love to use a monogram to customize gingerbread people, and I keep these in bags on the ready for last-minute unexpected guests and little gifts of thank you. Now that these are done and being stored, I can move on to making gingerbread houses for every single person in my family. Every year, each person gets to decorate their own, and it is one of the most fun activities. They always want me to pick whoever's is best, but I refuse to do it. It's not the end result, it's the process, and I know that there's a flow and an enjoyment that can only be created through doing something that comes once a year.